Hello, this is Dr. Heather Lee, and this is a discussion about differentiated instruction, the principles of differentiated instruction, and what it looks like, how to accomplish it in the classroom. So we're going to begin by talking about 8 key principles of a differentiated classroom. And these come from Carol Ann Tomlinson, who is one of the national experts in differentiated instruction. And she's written several books and has lots of good teaching on this subject area. So there are some principles that should govern what you do in related to differentiation. There are many ways to differentiate, and it needs to fit your learning style, your teaching style, your students at the time, but it should revolve around these key principles. The first one, I'm sorry, I forgot to explain that you should download this, this document and print it out or have it on your computer and actually use it to fill in blanks and to record information as we go along, because you will be responsible for this information and you'll need to know what those blanks are at a later time. So you may need to pause this now and go to the shared document section of our website and print this off or save it on your computer if you need to do that. So let's begin with these key principles. The first one is that the teacher is clear about what matters in subject matter. Matters is your first fill in the blank there. In other words, you know what's really important to focus on. And what we should be focusing on is not the minor little things, facts and figures, but we should be focusing on key concepts and generalizations or principles about our subject matter, things that students really need to know in the long run. Listen to how Professor Tomlinson describes it. She says, few learners can amass and recall scores of bits of data on multiple topics, let alone organize and use all of that data. All learners would probably fare better if lessons focused on key ideas and meanings. When the curriculum covers 500 pages, it is difficult to do much more than to drag everyone through those pages in the time available. On the other hand, focusing on key concepts and generalizations can ensure that all learners gain powerful understandings that serve as building blocks for meaning and access to other knowledge. Key concepts act as springboards to help all learners make connections between the topic under consideration and expanded studies. And these learners are more likely to find their school experiences more memorable, useful, and engaging. I love that idea of not just covering material in the classroom. In fact, if you think about it, covering material, if you covered something, you're hiding it from view. Instead, we should be uncovering material for our students, helping them to understand it, helping them to understand what really matters about it. And what really matters is not just the date, it's not just numbers, it's not just how many people were in that war, how many countries, where is this located, what's the capital of, but what really matters are key principles related to our subject areas. So that's the first one. The teacher's clear about what matters. Number 2, the teacher understands, appreciates, and builds upon student differences. Differences is your fill-in for number 2. And this is something that I'm sure you have realized that I've been harping on all during the course. That we need to understand, we need to have a positive perception about, and then we actually have to use what we know about student differences in the classroom. Key principle number 3 is that assessment and instruction are inseparable. Assessment and instruction are inseparable. In other words, you can't just instruct and do things in your classrooms without assessing it, without finding out before, during, and after instruction what your students know. And then you use that information. You don't just have a grade on a quiz or a grade on a test and consider that your assessment. But instead you use it and you find out what your students need more help in, and you use that to differentiate your curriculum. Key principle number 4, the teacher adjusts, ADJUSTS, adjusts content, process, and product in response to student readiness, interests, and learning profile. This is basically the definition of differentiation right here. You might want to put a star next to number 4. So the first blank is that a teacher adjusts. And what do we adjust? The content, process, and product. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And we adjust that in response to student readiness, interest, and learning profile. So our students are what determine how we end up making adjustments to our teaching. Key principle number 5, all students participate in respectful work. Respectful work. And what that means is that everyone should have real work. No one should have frou-frou stuff. You shouldn't have your strongest kids doing something that's just kind of a fun extra project. Or your things for students who are struggling shouldn't be just low level, just knowledge things, simple, easy things that really don't ever make them think. So everybody should have respectful work that they enjoy. If you discover that it's certain groups or your strong students that always get the fun, creative type projects, then that's a problem, because everybody should have fun, creative projects. So find ways to make everything respectful and everything engaging that your students do. Key principle number 6, students and teachers are collaborators in learning. Collaborators. That means that they often work together, and students may give you ideas. Students can help make decisions. The teacher can provide some choices, and the students then get to make those choices and be a part of the learning process. So students and teachers are collaborators in learning. Number 7, goals of a differentiated classroom are maximum growth and individual success. Maximum growth, that means everybody is learning, everybody is growing, whether they are your strongest student, whether they're your weakest, or whether they're the norm, they're in the middle. And individual success. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to other people, what they got, their grade, what they're doing, but instead every student should be focusing on learning the most that they can. And that's success, when they have learned and when they have made strides. And number 8, the final principle of a differentiated classroom is that flexibility is the hallmark of a differentiated classroom. Flexibility. You have to be willing to try different things, to see what works, to be willing to try something that maybe isn't a way that you learn very well, but it's a way that your students learn very well, or one of your students learn well. So as a teacher in a differentiated classroom, you must be willing to be flexible. Let's go on to a major definition of differentiation, a way of thinking about it. And in this section, you'll have a couple of words to fill in here. Differentiation, if you could put it into a definition, is a teacher's response to learners' needs guided by general principles of differentiation, such as, and we're going to write 3 of these down here. The first one you can write down are respectful tasks. We talked about that one earlier, that everything that students are doing in a differentiated classroom should be respectful, it should be engaging, it should be good quality learning. Another second general principle to put down here is flexible grouping. In a differentiated classroom, yes, sometimes you have students who are in the lower group often, or who are often advanced in your subject area, but those groups need to be flexible. You should not set a group and keep it for the remainder of the year. Sometimes you have a group that's based on just interests. Sometimes students choose a group. Sometimes you determine a group. Sometimes it's a more random group. So the groups aren't, they're not static, so that students start to realize, wait a second, I'm in the low group, or I'm always with these same students. And then another general principle that often describes differentiated instruction is ongoing assessment and adjustment. That goes along with key principle number 3 from above, that assessment and instruction are inseparable. But a teacher should have ongoing assessment and then adjusting of her classroom, her strategy, her teaching. So let me just recap that one more time. Differentiation of instruction is a teacher's response to learners' needs, guided by general principles of differentiation, such as respectful tasks, flexible grouping, and ongoing assessment and adjustment. That is an introduction to differentiation, and in the next video section, we will talk about how teachers differentiate content, process, and product according to the student's readiness, interests, and learning profiles.